Well, it's my very great pleasure to be sitting here with Alan Gore, one of our game's greatest administrators. Welcome, Alan. Thank you so much for taking the time to pop in and have a chat. I want to start, if I can, and take you right back to when you were 11 years of age.
Way back. It's a long time ago.
It's a very long time ago when you played for the Otahu club. What can you remember about going back and playing there?
Actually, I remember a friend of mine at Herrick School suggested that he was going to go and play football, as that was what I heard, football, for a club in Otahu. And I said, oh, I'd be interested in that. He said, well, come along too. And went along, and gee, they played funny rules, I thought. And so I went home and told my dad. He said, oh, that's rugby league, he said. So he said, oh, that's a good game. He said, you stick to it. And I always did.
So when you think about that time, and you're 11 years of age, was there any players that influenced you in any way to stay in the game that you can remember?
No, I think I so enjoyed the game and probably got a little bit better at it from after my first year that I just sort of stuck through it. I stayed with Otahu all the way. I think the fact that I got into a few schoolboy rep teams and we amalgamated shield things at Auckland and so on aided the thing along the line. And I kept playing right through Otahu, all the way through. It was the only club I ever played for, except I did go and play a little bit for university on a Sunday when they were trying to get established. So
it was just your mates?
It was just the mates that got us going, and we all, several other kids from that school also joined up with us later on, and so it's just one of those things. And as I say, we played for years through the schoolboys, all the grades, and then right through seniors.
What about coaches?
Coaches?
Yeah, what about coaches? You remember much about coaches?
Yeah, we had a guy called Everett McManus who was a fantastic coach.
McManus, the great McManus name.
That's right, yes. And Everett and Peter Shadd to everybody. I don't know whether you've come across him, Gordon.
Yes,
but
absolutely.
He was a fantastic coach. He took us from about 5th grade right through to seniors and all the way through, now you call it premiers, I suppose now. And so, I had 9 years playing top grade football. We went from 2nd division up into the 1st division and played right through till 1959, I think it was.
You go to Auckland Grammar. What happens to your rugby league?
Well, that was a problem. It was quite funny because I wanted to keep playing, and because I had a sort of a rep career with the schoolboys, and I wanted to keep playing, and they wanted me to play rugby, of course, and there was a great deal of problems going on there. That I was ostracised a bit for a while, but and
so you didn't play rugby?
No, I didn't play rugby at all. I stuck it out actually, and so it was a difficult time.
So South Auckland, strong league hold nowadays. Back then, was it still strong? The Otahu club.
No, the Otahu club had done very, very well in the early 1940s and got into seniors, and then faded away. We, as I say, we picked up a team that was very good in the schoolboys, into the grades, and then into senior seconds. We had to try and win our way back, and we were very, very lucky actually, because we won the senior 2nd division, and well, that's not quite true. We played at Ellerslie. Go back again. There used to be 8 teams in the senior competition, and they were very good sides. City Newton was the team that had finished last, and they had to go into promotion relegation. So Otahu and Ellerslie had to play. We were the top and second teams in the senior 2nd division, and there were good players like Cyril Eastlake was playing for Ellerslie. Anyway, so we had to play off. They beat us 10-5, so we felt okay. We've got another year in senior seconds. But when the board looked at it, and Ellerslie had won their way up, and there was obviously a lot of old city people on the board, so they managed to turn it around and said, let's have 10 teams. So of course they left City staying in the senior competition, and Ellerslie went up, and we went up on their coattails, and we carried right on until 1958, and we were in the final of the Fox Memorial competition, and it was a real, Ponsonby beat us unfortunately, but we won the Root Rooster in 1957, I think it was. No, we did well, and then Otahu Club went on from that stage on.
So I was going to mention that too actually. In 58 you played Ponsonby in the Fox Grand Final. What do you remember of that day?
Well, I remember we were so totally disappointed
Yes.
because I was hooker and I thought I'd done my job on that particular day. I won just about every scrum, and yet they still beat us, and without the ball, they were a very good side.
Very good side. Can you remember with the mighty Leopards there some standout players that you sat alongside?
Oh, yeah, Dick Havey was the guy. I don't know whether you ever come across him. He was a fantastic player. He was the funniest guy actually out. He was brilliant on his day, and the next day he was an absolute dog.
we see that today.
He had one day he would, he burst into the back line. He was playing fullback. He would burst into the back line. He had terrific pace. He could kick goals from all over the place. And the next minute, he'd wave one guy through, and he said, well, "Why didn't you guys tackle him? It's not my job."
1965. Yes. You get the opportunity to become a Kiwi, and you get into the Kiwi trials. Did you enjoy that?
No, it was 1955.
Oh, 55. Okay.
Yeah,
my apologies.
Yes, that was good. Oda, who had started to get heard of, we used to play a lot out at Stooges Park and that sort of thing. But gradually we got on, and we started to get a few opportunities, and we had some good players: John Yates, Simon Yates, some of those guys, and. And I got picked in for there was a North-South Island game for the team to go away to England, and Possibles Probable game beforehand. I was in the Possibles, I think, at that stage, and didn't play all that well in the game. It hurt my shoulder actually, and but we had to turn out the next day. They picked the top 13. They were going to take 26 away to England, and. We had to play again on the second. Played much better the second day, and I thought I had a rough show, but I didn't.
Okay, administration.
Yeah.
Where on earth did the opportunity come up for you to get involved in administration?
Well, it's funny. That is an Otahu association too.
Yeah.
There was a guy called Jeff Hall who was son of the president of the Otahu club. He was the actual treasurer of the Auckland Rugby League, and. He came along to me after I retired in 1959 and said, you're an accountant. He said, I don't want this job. He said, would you like to be assistant treasurer and take over from me? And I thought, well, okay, put something back into the game I'd so enjoyed. So anyhow, so that's what happened. I was assistant treasurer for a year or so, and then I took over and was the treasurer of the Auckland League for a while.
And then delegate to the New Zealand.
Yeah, and then I was a delegate to New Zealand for Auckland. In those days, they had delegates from each province, and so and Auckland was the prime one. And I beat a guy called Jeff Plant, who was a New Zealand manager at one stage for the job, and they wanted some youth apparently. And I'd retired from being the treasurer, and I had to go to this job, and so overall that was how it got me onto the New Zealand Rugby League. And
money's in those days. How easy was the money for?
The money wasn't, because we had all sorts of. We had owned Carlisle Park, and the situation was we had to make it pay. And so we had boxing matches, we had all sorts of things down there to try and supplement the income, because you had a property right in the centre of the city, paying rates and insurance and maintenance and all that sort of thing, and you're only using it every weekend over the winter months, so you had to supplement it some way. So all that during that time, so I went, we attended all boxing matches and also they had religious revivals, they had everything, you name it down there, bike races. So it worked out. It was very, very interesting because you got along to a lot of those things. There were pop shows and everything else.
Yes, I remember those. So the New Zealand Rugby League treasurer you become when Ted Nolan.
When Ted gave up, and so I took over from there again because of my accounting training, of course, and so I went from there, and then I gave it up, I think, at one stage there, and then went back about a year or two later as the deputy chairman. Trevor Maxwell was the chairman, and I became deputy chairman. And then Trevor resigned, and I was left high and dry. I was so-called president for about a month or 6 weeks, but I was running 2 businesses at the time, and I just realised that it wasn't really good for me. Yeah.
There's one thing that actually became one of the biggest assets that the game's ever known, and that was the Auckland Leagues Club, and you were basically a founding member.
That's right, yes. Yeah.
How did that come about, purchasing such a wonderful property?
Yeah, yeah.
You know, it's still a legacy today.
Absolutely. The ex-Kiwis had talked about forming a leagues club for many, many years, but they never really got round to it. And I just can't remember the guy's name. He was a Kiwi and he played for Point Chevalier. Gray. What was his first name? He was a real estate agent. He came down to me because I was treasurer of the Auckland League at the time, and he said to me, "Alan, I've got the perfect property. It's up in Augustus Terrace," and he said, "We need to do something." And and at that stage I was running my own accountancy practice in Avondale, and at this stage I was still building it up. And so I spent a great deal of time with him, and we managed to scrape together, with the ex-Kiwis' help, enough money to get a deposit on this property, and then we took it from there and we built it all up from there. So I was the first inaugural treasurer of it, and
well, and look what it's doing.
What it turned out.
It's still generating.
Generating income, and that's right. And
so where are we at with the Leagues Club today? What's the situation there with that?
Well, so my understanding of it is, of course, that they just part and parcel. They sort of lease out the Commerce Club, and they're not taking on any new members, and they've got a heap of money from the sale of Augustus Terrace, and which they sort of look after all their old, and they are all old people now. They have given us a little bit of help down there in the museum, and they donated a bit of money for us. So, but they're sitting on a lot of money still.
So speaking of assets, and you just brought it up there, the New Zealand Rugby League Museum, which is such a wonderful, wonderful asset to the game, and you're part of that, and you're being part of that and driving the whole museum. That's such a wonderful thing to be part of, isn't it?
Well, it was. It was very interesting. Something that was always talked about, even when I was on the New Zealand Rugby League board. But Lion Breweries were always going to help out with it at one stage. They even offered the Carlton Hotel down in the bottom of Newmarket at one stage, and I thought that was going to go ahead, but for some reason it didn't. And then finally Jack Fagan got a group of the guys together and said, "Hey, let's do something positive about this. You always hear it's going to happen, but it never does." And away it went from there.
You get to represent New Zealand in the end. You go away as business manager of the Kiwis in '67. So how did that come about?
Well, I put my hand up for it because I always thought, well, I was only about 35 or something at the time, so I was a fairly young manager at that stage. But I only went for the business manager because being an accountant, it was that side of things I could look after and look after well. But I still had that itch, I'd only retired from playing about 7 years, so I was keen. I hope they might look for a reserve at some stage.
So who's some of the names that?
Oh well, it wasn't a very, very good tour actually. It was an unhappy tour. We lost all 3 tests. We toured over Australia for 10 or 12 weeks, I think. It was a long time away. We took 26 players, and we had Cess Mountford as the overall manager, and he had overall power. Laurie Blanchard was the coach, and I was the business manager, and we had one masseur guy who went with us. And now I know they take 12 or 13 now or something, but that was all we had anyway. But we took away 2 teams, and we would play midweek and the weekend, and the big games of course on the weekend. But unfortunately some of the players that we had just really weren't quite, in the second team were not quite up to the standard, and so you had to overplay some of the players from the top side to fill in a few holes, and there were a few problems on the tour.
But a great experience.
It was a great experience. But it really put me off a little bit from doing it again.
Believe you me, I know where you're coming from. There. So over the years, Alan, you must have seen some wonderful things happen in the game. What significant changes have happened both on the field and off the field?
Well, on the field, of course, in my day, as a hooker, I was long and with big long legs, and I could just hang out the tunnel, and the ball would just bounce off you, and if you hit it, and the only way I played under unlimited tackles, the only way you could get the ball was from the scrum. You see, so the hooker was a very, very important player, and the boys would give it to you if you weren't getting that ball from absolutely. So that's and of course the unlimited tackles, you just carried on and carried on until someone either kicked the ball out or knock on or something like that and a forward pass.
Because I mean, obviously, a hooker was a hooker in
those days, exactly.
Yeah.
Nowadays, I wouldn't get a game.
No.
Honestly, I wouldn't. Because they use virtually another halfback as a hooker, don't they? Someone who can dart away from the scrum and from the ruck and that sort of thing. Yeah.
So when you think back, just if you can tell us who had the biggest influence on you in the game, but on the field and off the field, the biggest influences on you to stay in the game?
Well, I was just, I don't know, it was just something that just went along with it. I just loved it. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I made some great friends, and I don't know whether anyone particularly, as I say, my coach was very, very instrumental in it. He made me captain of the O2 side for about 3 years, but I wasn't really a captain. Because I played all the time because I was hooker. I wasn't a marvellous, outstanding player, but I was a sort of a regular sort of guy that was going to play every week and that sort of thing. But I think basically that may well be the big influence, because I liked the guy and he was very, very good. And the team just sort of, you hear people say that they'll walk over broken glass, broken glass to do something, and but that's exactly what our team would do for this guy. He was really great. So he had a fairly big influence on me.
Here's a tough one for you.
Yeah.
If you had the opportunity to make any changes in the game today, what would it be?
I don't know.
Do you like the way that the game has progressed?
In some ways, yes, it's faster and quicker, but I don't like two referees, for example.
Go back to one referee?
One referee, and I do think we're a little bit too predictable at this stage. With just 6 tackles, you always know what there's a pattern followed all the time, whereas in the old days, you can hang on to the ball and wait to do something and catch them out.
So there's 2 biggies. You want to go back to one referee and unlimited tackles.
That's right. Well, no, not quite unlimited tackles. No, because it did get boring at times, particularly when you're playing at Carlo Park on a wet day, and you got hold of that ball and you made sure you hung on to it and hung on to it and hung on to it. But when I played, we were getting 10,000 people coming down to Carlo Park on a Saturday afternoon, and the crowds were fantastic, and we had bigger crowds going to there than they did going to Eden Park. And
how many people were at your Fox final when you played Ponce?
Oh, there'd be over 10,000, I'm sure. Quite sure. Yeah. I mean, it was really something in those. In the 1950s was a great era, really. We produced some great footballers and
great administrators too.
I don't know about that, but
so just Alan, on behalf of New Zealand Rugby League, thank you so very much for what you've done for the game and continue to do for the game. It's been our pleasure to be able to have a chat with you, so thank you so much.
Good. Thanks, Geordie. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.